Have you ever felt like you're looking at the world but not quite seeing how all the pieces fit together? Well, today we're not going to look at random events or chaotic markets. No, we're going to look at the blueprint, at a deliberate structure, an architecture of power that shapes our entire world. And fair warning, once you see it, you really can't unsee it.
This quote right here really gets to the heart of it. Let's start with this powerful idea. What if all the problems we see, the crazy inequality, the crushing debt, the environmental crises, what if they aren't accidents? What if they're not bugs in the system, but are actually the features of a system that's working exactly as intended?
And that brings us to our first big idea, the great illusion. See, it's a pretty comforting belief, isn't it? That society is just this big, messy, chaotic thing that sort of grows organically. But what if that belief, that illusion of chaos, is actually the first wall of the very architecture we're about to explore?
Here's the core idea, plain and simple. Our world is not chaos. It's a construction. It's built, layer by layer, on interests and rules that, let's be honest, you and I never agreed to. But we live with the consequences every single day. And look, this isn't some wild conspiracy theory. It's just a mechanical description of how power actually functions.
Okay, so if it's a construction, what does it actually look like? What's the blueprint? Let's get into it. We're going to move from this abstract idea to a very, very concrete structure. We're going to look at the pyramid of power. So, forget any idea you have about a level playing field. It's just not true. Structurally, we live in a pyramid. And this is way more than just a metaphor. It's the actual reality that dictates how everything, resources, influence, power, flows from the very bottom right up to the very top. At the very bottom, you have the base. We're talking billions of people. This is the layer that supports the entire structure. We, do it by working, consuming, paying off debt, and carrying the tax burden. We are the foundation. And most of the time, we don't even realize we're part of this massive pyramid. Now, moving up a layer, we get to the middle. This is where you find the players that seem powerful. National governments, big banks, major corporations. But the truth is, they operate inside a kind of cage. They're trapped by huge economic pressures, like the constant need for growth and paying off debt. And they're legally tied up by treaties and contracts they can't just walk away from. So, yeah, they have authority, but they don't have real freedom.
And above them? Well, that's where you find the global institutions. The IMF, the World Bank, the WTO. These are the rule setters. You can think of them as the referees of the global game. They operate on a level above national governments, and they write the rule book for finance and trade that everyone in that middle layer has to play by.
So what's at the very, very top? The apex. Now, this isn't some secret society meeting in a dark room. It's more of an intertwined cluster of immense capital and influence. We're talking mega funds, private equity, the biggest tech giants. They don't need to conspire because their interests are already so perfectly aligned that the system just works for them automatically. And the amount of power we're talking about here, it is just staggering. This cluster at the apex controls a capital volume of up to $90 trillion. I mean, try to wrap your head around that number. To put it in perspective, that is the largest, most concentrated economic force in all of human history. It dwarfs the economies of most nations combined. Okay, so we've seen the structure. We see the pyramid. But how does it stay standing? What are the gears and levers that keep this thing running and reinforcing itself, day in and day out? Let's break down the rules of the game. The first rule, well, it all comes down to simple math. Think of it like this. Capital is a rocket ship. It grows exponentially through interest, dividends, all that stuff. But labor? Labor is a treadmill. It grows linearly through wages, which can barely even keep up with inflation. And right there, that's the core engine of inequality. Wealth at the top grows almost on its own, while everyone else at the bottom has to run faster and faster just to stay in the same place.
All right, rule number 2. This one's a big one. It's all about how money is actually created. See, our whole system is literally built on debt. When a bank gives you a loan, it creates that money out of thin air. But here's the crazy part. The real catch, the money needed to pay back the interest on that loan, it's never created. That means there is always more debt out there than there is money to pay it off. This creates a permanent, desperate need for more growth and more debt just to stop the whole machine from collapsing in on itself.
And that brings us to rule number 3, the slow dismantling of the state. I mean, over the last 40 years or so, governments have been selling off control of almost everything essential: energy, water, infrastructure, even our data. And the logic behind it is pretty simple. If you think about it, what a government doesn't own, it can't truly control. Power is just being transferred piece by piece from democratic hands to private ones.
And this leads to this absolutely fascinating, if a little cynical, business model you could call the green paradox. The very same cluster of capital that owns the companies causing the pollution also owns the funds selling the so-called solutions, like green energy or carbon credits. It's genius in a way. They profit from creating the crisis, and then they profit all over again from selling the cure. Heads they win, tails you lose.
So when you see all of this laid out, all these interlocking gears, it's easy to feel a little powerless, right? The structure can feel overwhelming, maybe even indestructible. And it begs the really big, really daunting question. How on earth can you possibly change a system that's so perfectly designed to keep itself going? And that very question is where we pivot. This is the crucial turning point. Because the answer isn't about fighting this system head-on. It's about a completely different strategy. It's about making power obsolete. The whole strategy hinges on this one core idea. You don't fight an entrenched system by trying to take its power away. You make its power irrelevant. It's like you don't fight the darkness in a room, you just flip on a light switch. You build an alternative that works better, that's more efficient, and that meets people's needs in a way the old system just can't. Real change happens through substitution, not through conflict.
So what could that new system, that new light switch, actually look like? Well, that brings us to our final section, a proposal for a totally new economic design, one built for the world we actually live in today.
It's a concept called the Hybrid Orchestration Economy, or HOE, and it basically flips the whole thing on its head. In this model, value isn't based on debt or speculation, it's based on a physical reality, energy. AI isn't used for control, it's used to orchestrate complex systems efficiently. And the number one goal? It isn't endless growth, it's human well-being. It really rests on three simple but powerful pillars. First, energy equals value. It's tied to something real, something physical that you can't just print out of thin air. Second, AI is the orchestrator. It's a tool for maximizing efficiency and getting rid of waste, not for controlling people. And third, and this is the most important one, the human is the goal. The entire system is reoriented to serve people, not the other way around. What this represents is a fundamental shift in our thinking. The core beliefs here are a direct answer to the failures of the old system. The idea that a sustainable economy simply cannot run on debt. That AI should manage things, not people. That true strength and resilience comes from decentralization. And, most importantly, that the economy must serve humanity.
So what's the whole point of a design like this? It's about moving us all from a state of dependence to one of genuine freedom. It's about reducing those systemic pressures, the debt, the fragility, the inequality that dominate the current architecture. By doing that, we can increase real human autonomy and build a much more stable and resilient world for everyone.
You know, we started this whole thing by saying that the world is a construction. And at first that might sound kind of disheartening. But if you think about it, it's actually the most empowering idea there is. Because if our world was built by design, that means it can be redesigned. It can be rebuilt. So the real question isn't whether the system can be changed. The real question is, what will we choose to build now?